I'm Tamia. I am the host and communicator of this podcast, Voices Among the Stars.
And I'm Layla. I am the co-host and I'm the editor of Voices Among the Stars.
Hi, I'm Swati Mohan. I'm an aerospace engineer. For the past 15 years, I've worked for NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory in sunny California.
So, one of our first questions was, what college did you attend to?
I went to Cornell University for my undergraduate degree. I got a Bachelor's of Science in Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering. And then I went to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, for my graduate degree, where I got my master's and my PhD in the Aeronautics and Astronautics department.
What would you say inspired you for your career in aerospace engineering?
So, for most of my childhood, I actually did not want to be an engineer. I wanted to be a physician, mostly because, I wanted to be a pediatrician. As a kid, you go to the pediatrician, they make you feel better. So it's a very tangible profession to be in. And I didn't know that you could do aerospace engineering. So when I was about 8 or 10, I saw my first Star Trek episode, and I was just enamored because it seemed so cool that you could be amongst the stars and go to places and learn about places where you fundamentally didn't know what was there. Like you didn't know why it was behaving like that. You didn't know what was out there. And that to me was super exciting. Um, so I got hooked into science fiction first because, Star Trek is set centuries in the future, and I thought it would stay in the future. There's no way that I can connect that futuristic role to a profession here. So it stayed very much as a side hobby and interest. And then when I was in high school, I took my first physics class, and there was something about like working with the machines and like understanding the equations that was much easier for me to understand and grasp than when I took classes in biology or chemistry or like was doing anatomy lab. So something just fit much better than that. And that was the first time where I realized like maybe I shouldn't go into medicine and I should do something in engineering of building stuff. Uh, and at that point, I had been exposed to NASA and rockets and space shuttles. So I'm like, well, if I'm going to build something, I might as well build it to go into space. That's kind of what inspired me to take this kind of detour into aerospace engineering.
Right. So, how did you end up working for NASA?
That's a great question. My very so when I took this detour, like junior year of high school, I was like, crap, I need to apply for colleges in less than a year. And I know nothing about this field. So it started this very like, I need to learn all I can. I need to, build up my resume. I need to, do internships to make myself appealing to these departments because everything I'd done in the past was very like bio focused and medicine and candy striping at the hospital and things like that. So in the same summer, I went to space camp in Alabama, which was super fun. And I managed to find, I lived in Northern Virginia, so very close to Goddard Space Flight Center, which is in Maryland. And I managed to find a high school unpaid, internship program where they let you come on campus for 2 weeks and you kind of just did stuff. So, like, my particular task was taking a stack of papers that they had and converting it into digital CAD drawings of those mechanical parts. So that was my first foray into working for NASA. It came from a lot of uh, Googling, like searching on the internet, like what opportunities are there? What scholarships are there? Like, what can I do? And throwing my hat in the ring for almost everything. And I kind of kept that up. So when I got to undergrad, same thing, like I'm looking for any class project, any research project that the professors might have. I applied to, any internship that like had NASA or space in the term. So as part of doing that, I after my freshman year, I had an internship at NASA Kennedy Space Center, doing like life sciences type of engineering and research. And then um, the second summer, I had an internship at Caltech, but it was in partnership with NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and that kind of gave me the floor of like, oh, I like this. And then the summer after, I got an internship at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. And they had a program of, okay, if you are a intern and you are a rising senior and you want to be considered for a job here, we'll just let us know and we'll just interview you while you're here for the summer before you go back to school. Then we don't have to take the trouble of flying you back and things like that because you were already here. So you've already kind of demonstrated your interest. So I managed to get an interview before I left at the end of the summer. This is the summer between my junior year and senior year. And they're like, okay, this is nice, nice meeting with you. I didn't hear back. And then about halfway through submitting my applications for graduate school, I heard back that I got the job offer from JPL. So I actually graduated early and then took that first job offer graduated a semester early, took that first job offer from JPL. I worked there for a year in between undergrad and grad, and then went back to grad school to like do what I wanted to do. But having those internships at different NASA centers kind of landed me that first job. And once I had that job, like it had it on your resume, and it was much easier to come back because I'd already like met the people there. I already, had the connection. So when I wanted to come back after grad school, kind of just emailed the people that I knew and say, hey, I'm done with school, the job offer. And that's how I was able to come back after graduate school.
So you seem like you know your way around like finding internships like really well. Do you have any advice for like students our age trying to find internships?
I think it's a lot of uh, your own legwork. It's a lot of it just comes to like taking the time to research these things and pulling on multiple threads. So like doing your own Google searches and internships, going to your academic counselor to see what they have, going to your local chapters of things, your associations to see what they have to offer, asking professors to see if they have any links. Like you never know which ones will pan out. So sometimes at the first layer, before you get that first one, like it's almost like painting the screen, like throw out as many feelers as you can get, see what comes back, and then use that to kind of figure out where to cast next. Like if it's not biting over here, but it is biting over here, okay, put more of your effort into this area to kind of see if you can get more out of that. And don't be afraid to look in like non-traditional roles or uh, industries because you're not just there's some part of like getting the particular company or particular agency, but there's also a building skills and having enough like tools in your toolbox that you can show to get the next thing. So even if you don't get your perfect match the first year, what can you get that you can say is still useful to build a skill that then you can leverage to get the next thing? Like if you don't get your dream one here, say, oh, okay, I'm going to take this, but I'm going to take it because it gives me the chance to, learn this scripting language or, build this skill set, even if it's not an internship, maybe it's auditing a class or doing an online curriculum that you can find. You're constantly building the skills in your toolbox that you can leverage. Another good thing is um, talking to professors when you're a student or your teachers so that they know who you are, that they know what you want for two reasons. One, so that when it comes time to apply for these internships, when you need recommendations, they actually know who you are to be able to give you a recommendation. Just sitting in the back of the class, and being in the class sometimes is not enough. And especially to get that first internship, you need the recommendations to have someone vouch for your potential. The second one is things come by their desk too, opportunities. And if you talk to them, even if like they don't have something right now, they might remember your name for when something comes, 3 weeks from now, a month from now. They're like, oh, Timmy went and asked me about this like a month ago. This seems to be up her alley. I should, just forward it and see if she like it. And then having those connections of other people knowing what you're looking for will also help kind of reel those things in. That's a form of networking, by the way, kind of like the early stages of networking.
You were a part of the 2020 NASA Mars mission. You were serving as the guidance, navigation, and controls leads for Perseverance. I'm sorry. I don't know why I can't talk today. Um, well, first question. What would you say, like, what does teamwork look like behind the scenes during something as intense as the Mars landing?
That's a great question. Teamwork looks different in different industries. The thing I liked most about working on Mars Perseverance, especially for the entry, descent, and landing system, is that it that job or that role to get it working was so complex. There were so many different moving parts that there was no single person in the universe that knew enough that they could do the job themselves, right? Like there was no way you could amass that amount of information in one person to to do it to the technical quality that you needed to ensure that it landed safely. So it kind of forced the teamwork so that you had all these people in different disciplines, like really kind of overlapping, that knew that they needed to hold their part up, and they knew that the other person's role was just as critical, just as important, and that they were the expert in their one role. So and all were kind of equal. Like there was no one part that was more than just the other because it was so critical that if any one link broke, like the whole thing would kind of it would just collapse. So there was a lot of respect built because of that, because you knew that you didn't know how to do someone else's job. So it kind of kept the egos in check and forced you to have to work together. There was a lot of open dialogue because of that, because you couldn't afford to build walls around your part and say, I'm just going to keep my part to myself. There was no room, there was no technical, capability to do that because everything was so tightly integrated. And then third, there had to be a lot of trust because no one person could do it. You didn't even have time to like really double check someone else's work. I mean, we tried to as best as possible to ask questions, but it was too big, too onerous. So there was a lot of trust that we had to build with each other of I'm going to trust you to get your part done and you're going to trust me to get my part done and we're the experts and we're going to hold hands and say, okay, I'm going to do my job and we're going to do it and we're going to hold and it's going to work in the end. So that created a very collaborative environment, a very open environment, and a very kind of like high bandwidth uh, discourse. Like you kind of were always up in each other's and information business and like kind of passing the baton off one another, which was really fun to do because it was you got from like, oh, everyone agrees on this one thing, or there are disagreements on these things. Because sometimes like there's two parts that have opposing ideas of how to fix a problem and to go one way or the other. So you get these arguments. But in the end, whenever we made a decision, like everyone held hands and made a decision. Like you couldn't afford to double guess or second guess yourself. Or once with that, once all the dialogue was open and discussed and kind of past us, we're like, okay, it's done. We're all we're all with it and we're all together and still moving in the same direction.
All right. Now I know this was like 6 years ago, but could you walk us through a typical day? What it looked like during the most critical phases of like the Mars landing?
Sure. Yeah, it's 5 years of till landing day, almost exactly in a month here. So that particular day, we were in operations. So when you're in operations, you are at the whim of solar system dynamics. So like when you have to launch for a planetary mission is based on where the planets are and like what time of day, and when you get to talk to it is based on um, the deep space network and like when you have access to actually viewing it from the Earth. So at that up through landing day that last week, we were in 24/7 coverage, which means there was always somebody in mission control. So we each were assigned a particular shift, which means okay, you get a designated time. You have to be there from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. Like it's usually like a 7 hour shift. And like that's the time that you have to report. And then someone else will come like half an hour before you're due to leave. For your particular role, like you have to explain to them what happened over the last seven hours, like what the state of the spacecraft is, and like any like tasks that need to be finished or completed in the next 7 hours, like questions that the mission director has asked or things like that. And you kind of hand over and then you go home. And you're kind of, when you're off, you're kind of off, depending on your role. That's like a operations schedule. Like you come in, you report to mission control, you're sitting there for your 7 hours. When you're done, your shift is done and you kind of leave. Someone else comes in and you keep repeating this pattern when you're on 24/7. I had a slightly different role where I was going in, I was kind of the anomaly backup case. So my shift was something like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I had a 12-hour shift. And my role was I was there in case something went wrong. And if something went wrong, like I was the one who's supposed to figure out what it was, triage, pull in the right people, and like start working out a solution to whatever the thing was going wrong so that we didn't get the whole mission on track. So it's about constantly like monitoring all the data that's coming in, listening to what's going on, trying to pick up on threads. If something looks a little bit weird, going and actually like running that to ground, saying like, okay, this looked weird. I'm gonna go check on that. And I like find these things. Okay, this is actually due to this reason, and that reason's okay. Like maybe just the sun was a little too high, but it tilted away and it's okay now, or like it just had a momentary blip and it's fine. Being able to disposition things that are going wrong, if they're going wrong as you're leading into the day. Um, the day of landing was completely different because it had the whole publicity, like not publicity. It had a whole media attention for it as well, right? And we can't actually landing day is different because you can't actually do much. It's completely automated. So on a usual day in mission control, you actually have a procedure and you're looking at data and you're deciding what to tell the spacecraft to do. So you'll go through it, you think, okay, my goal for this shift is to get the spacecraft to do this. You check that the spacecraft is healthy and you're like, okay, it's healthy, so it can do what I want it to do. Then you send the commands to say, okay, spacecraft, do this, and then it'll do it. And then you'll look at the data comes back, say, okay, yeah, it did it successfully, yay, good, check marks, and then you'll go to the next thing. But on landing day, you just set it up and you're hands off. You're constantly just looking to make sure things are going right, but you don't actually have any control really about fixing anything. So it's all the stress and terror of things going wrong with none of the ability to fix it. And then you add in the whole like it's being live streamed everywhere in the world, like as it's happening. So you have to, make sure your face, you don't give away anything in the face, or if it's a bad day, like it's going to be broadcast to the entire world as it's happening. So that adds a whole nother layer of stress. Those operations phases are like a small part of what we do. Like that day, or like even the whole 6 months of operations, like I worked on the project for 8 years, right? And that type of day in life was only the last 6 months of the 8 years that I worked on the project. Before that, it varies based on your phase. Like in the beginning, you're kind of working in the PowerPoint and paper design, a lot of team meetings trying to whiteboard things like maybe you should work like this, or maybe you should work like that, and kind of designing. And then you implement, and then spend a lot of time in the test bed, working with the mock-up of actually like sending it practice commands, seeing where it broke, and like then someone would fix it, and then I'd test it again and kind of put it through its paces before actually getting to operations.
That sounds so stressful.
It does. It
I'm
really
sorry.
does.
My next question, ooh, voice crack. My next question was, how did you like manage to process all that along with like if there was any problems, you would have to like I'm kind of assuming here, but you would have to like figure out a problem like as fast as you can. Like it's a lot of problem solving, but also like a lot of stress, and you have to like just balance it out. How do you do that? How did you do that?
We practiced actually. So we have a whole process of um, first we figure out what are the most likely things to go wrong, and then we write out our plan for if that thing were to go wrong, what are the steps that we can do to fix it. So we have these stacks of procedures. If this would go wrong, these are the steps that you need to do. So we prepare first for that. So like if the thing comes, we're not like trying to figure out what to do. We figure out first what the problem is, and then we kind of have our playbook of what to do if it's that problem. So we build all of that up so that we're ready in case it happens. And then the second, we actually practice it. So we it's almost like putting on a dress rehearsal. We all get in the room, we pretend it's the actual day, and then we have people who are behind the scenes that we can't see, that we can't talk to, um, and they kind of have the knobs to the spacecraft, so they will put in bad things to happen subversively, like they would come in, and our job is to be able to, like we would for the real thing, figure out if what the bad thing that's happened and like do the right thing. So that helps us test, can you actually find the thing that went wrong? Once you find it, did you do the right steps of actually, telling the right people, like actually doing the procedures that you're supposed to do? So by practicing ahead of time, which we do like in the actual mission control with the actual consoles and stuff, sitting in the seats that we would on the day of, it helps to dry run that. So like you're comfortable in your seats, you kind of have worked through it before, and you've exercised the process so that when you get to the actual thing, it feels more like, okay, I'm doing the thing that I'm trained to do. I just have to focus on doing that as opposed to focusing on the other parts of it. You kind of have gotten yourself into, if this happens, I know what to do. I'm going to follow these procedures, and gives you the tools to stay calm and focus on the problem at hand instead of worrying about the things you can't worry about or can't do anything about.
That really is a good method. I wish I could do that. Um, you've clearly made a very big achievement. But I'm sure you've made plenty of other achievements in your life. What would you say throughout all your career is your favorite achievement?
I don't know. That's a very hard question. I feel like it changes every time I do something, because every like big success has checked a different box. So it has like a different feel to it, or a different skills that I was able to achieve. I mean, Perseverance landing was definitely a huge check mark for me, because it was the first mission that I worked from the beginning all the way to ending. So like it's almost like raising a kid. Like I started from the very beginning. I like built it with my own hands, saw it working at the end. Um, I haven't worked on another project like that where I've done the whole arc. The next mission that I worked on, Psyche, it was a very different feeling of success. When I joined the project, it was in a super bad place. Like they were super behind schedule. They didn't know if they were going to actually launch on time. The people that I was put in charge to help manage, they were completely overworked, overstressed, and like didn't know how to make progress. So it was a different set of skills to try to bring the team together, organize all the things, figure out what needed to be done first, and actually get it done super quickly in order to have them launch, in a reasonable amount of time. So kind of super compressed. It was only like a year that I was on the project, but a lot happened in that 1 year, and we had to do it in the focus of, not in focus of the world, but like NASA headquarters management was like looking in, a lot of check-ins. So it it exercised a lot of like managerial, like leadership skills, versus the Mars 2020 for me was a very like technical contribution. Like I coded this, or I built this, type of thing. So different skills, different legs up, and different impact, to the lab, which was just as gratifying.
So would you say you always been like a good leader, or I guess manager in a way? Or did that something just come over
No.
time?
I think you always be a good leader. I'd be surprised if someone can come straight out of school and be claimed as a good leader. Every role you learn, and even if you've been a manager before, like the next team that you are with, uh, they're different people, and people are unique, and like there are different ways to lead. You have to adapt your leadership style to the people that you're leading. The thing that helped me was that I started very small, right? Like for the first leadership or manager role that I had, I was mostly just managing myself, which was easier to do than managing others. And then I was managing myself and one other person. And then I was managing myself and three other people. So it was a night. And then then it kind of jumped to myself and like 10 other people. So it was a very incremental increase, so which really helped. So it started from a very small focused area to slightly bigger, slightly bigger, slightly bigger, but they were all in the same discipline. So it was like it was kind of growing from one area and like managing the pieces that it all touched. It wasn't like jumping to another thing, which thing I think helps because I didn't so much have to learn the new area. I just had to kind of grow in scope. I kind of already knew the other area. Um, but like I said, the more people that you manage, the skills to manage them are different. Uh, and you just kind of have to try it out and do it, I think. Listening helps a lot, and actually processing what people have to say, getting to know them, getting to know each individual to understand how they communicate, um, how they express their worries and fears and um, even like their successes, like being able to moderate yourself so that you get an idea of some people like make a mountain over molehill. Some people like will completely diminish, their successes. So being able to bear to moderate yourself so that you can give them the correct credit or you can plan accordingly. That was super helpful. And then the third was building trust with the individual so that they feel comfortable talking to you, expressing it, giving feedback if you weren't going awry. Because I've often found that I like managing people smarter than me because then like I can kind of organize stuff and I put it in front of them and they give feedback. And if you really listen, like really helps you to kind of shape and get in a better direction. And then they'll be on board too because their comments were incorporated in whatever like I may not have known they did know. And then you can all work together to form a better team or product.
You say like, well, you were growing up. Did you see people in the STEM field who like looked like you?
I will do a nuance of that. So, my background is South Asian. I'm an Indian American, and I will say in Indian culture, uh, going into STEM field is very highly regarded. So, like, there's an adage of like, you grow up, you're either a doctor or an engineer, and you don't really get other choices than that. And both of them are STEM field. So, um, yes, there were a lot of STEM roles, I would say. Like my parents were both engineers of some sort, and they worked in the software industry, as were a lot of my aunts and uncles. Um, I will say though that the in school when I was training, so I saw that in like my family, especially those that came from India, like because the culture kind of biases towards that. Being a woman in STEM was definitely noticeable in school. Like in my classes, in my computer science class, I was the only girl. In my AP physics class, I think there was one or two of us. In undergrad, I think we got to like 10% of women in like 100-person class of mechanical engineering. So it was always noticeable there. Even now, like for like 10 years in a JPL, like my section, which is very math intensive field within STEM, was still only like 15% women for, decades, right? So that part was definitely noticeable. And so I felt that part of like constantly having to put myself forward more, having to advocate for myself more so than other people may have had to do.
So it seemed like growing up, you were very like underrepresented visually, at least in the women's section. How do you think that affected your development? Like, I know personally, I get very insecure, like when it comes to competing with my male classmates on who's smarter and who's not, because I always feel like I have to prove myself. So I'm kind of curious to see your perspective on it.
I feel like I had to be more um, outspoken and aggressive than I may have naturally been had I not been in that type of field. As a child, I was pretty shy. Like I was the one who like didn't really want to go ask the receptionist how much longer we had to wait, or like I was not the one who was answering the phone at home because I didn't really want to talk to strangers. And once I got to school, especially being the only female, I had to find the allies of like who would support me, the male colleagues that like would be, a good homework partner or whatever. Once I got to the workplace, I actually had to work on it as a skill. So like I joined Toastmasters International to make sure that I could speak in public. So like practice giving speeches or extemporaneous talking so that like when I gave talks or when I answered questions that I would be able to hold my own against any others. Made sure I sat at the table, like made sure I talked up and didn't wait for a pause in the conversation to talk because otherwise I would never get my chance in. So it definitely led to like sometimes having a tendency to talk over people or like talk too loud, which was driven from this being in such a male dominated area and having to almost shout to get my uh, name heard in the early days, like the first 10 years or so of my career. After I got to a particular spot where I was kind of established with the group that I was in or the section that I was in, I was able to dial back on some of those, and I made a conscious effort actually to dial back to focus more on like the type of leadership style that I wanted, which is a little bit more consensus building and um, relaxed posture than kind of in your face.
All right. Our next question. What's one piece of advice you wish you could give your younger self when starting out?
Don't be afraid to fail. The moments you regret most in your journey are not uh they're not the opportunities that you failed to take. It's the ones that you didn't take. Those are the ones that you're going to regret. So it's better to try for something, whether you get it or not, just try and be brave about trying for it and then be um, what's the word? Be very disciplined in what you choose to try for, to follow what you want to do, not what others are telling you you should do, or not what others want you to do, but everything that you try for should be with intention. And with that intention, with a brave, uh, trying for something and following the paths that are unexpected could lead you places you never imagined. But it all starts with that little bit of effort at the beginning of being willing to try and be willing to be brave and being okay with failing and learning from those opportunities that were missed.
Yep.
So you said you were pretty big into Star Trek growing up. Took me a long time to figure out how to do this one, by the way. So I'm assuming you're like really into big into science fiction, which I say our team is pretty big into science fiction because we based our entire team name and number off of Star Trek. Fun fact. Fun fact,
Nice.
shout out to Star Force 11173, this main sponsor of this video. But all jokes aside, do you believe that science fiction pushes engineers to dream bigger, or do you believe real engineering pushes sci-fi to dream bigger?
I think it's a beautiful loop, right? Like there's creativity that comes from both ends that feed each other to like spiral into the future. Uh, Science fiction can kind of take the big overarching leaps of like, I'm just going to guess at what things are like in the future, and they're going to be flying cars or flying this or that. And then that inspiration of what people want or what people would want to have or imagine it to be kind of lends itself to like the engineers asking like, well, what could we do for that? And it leads to those individual steps of like, oh, okay, we're gonna create um the effective of the tricorder, right? Which our cell phones basically are right now. Or how do you create a holodeck, or with the VR technology we have, and that gives practical like implementation that goes in that direction, but then create these new ideas of like, oh, if we had VR, what if we had a metaverse, right? Like, and it kind of spawns that next iteration for the creativity based on where we are now to kind of um, keep that creativity of what that future looks like going. There's so much back and forth that it's not just one directional, like they play off of each other in the best sense. They both feed forward to kind of progress us into the future.
Star Trek.
What do you sorry. What advice would you give out to people, well, girls aspiring to go into the STEM field?
Yeah. I have three-part advice that I usually give out. The first one is to know who you are and what you want, right? That is so important. There's a quote in Hindu scripture that says, "It is better to follow your own path, however imperfectly, than to follow in the footsteps of another perfectly," which means, you got to do you, right? Like there is only one you that's put on this universe, and you have whatever strengths, whatever flaws, whatever passions you have are unique to you. And to find the most fulfillment and to add the most value to society, you need to pair the passions that you have, the interests that you have, with the skills that you're naturally good at or you naturally want to build to pair them together. And that's when you kind of get the exponential benefit of how to contribute or how to actually achieve success. But those are so specific to every individual, right? No one can tell you what your interests are. Like they can expose you to things and say like these are cool, but it's up to you to decide what you actually like or don't like. And your skills, like some skills can be learned, but there's ways that your brain thinks that makes you better, that makes some skills or some traits easier for you than other things. And when you set yourself in a way that you really like something and the skills that that particular role or job needs are things that come intrinsically easy to you or you're good at, you set yourself up in a really good starting place for success, right? Because you kind of found the niche that you are uniquely qualified to do. That's number one, know yourself. Number two is build a good support system. This is, friends, parents, mentors, advisors, resources. It is hard, no matter what path you take, no matter if you're uniquely suited to it, to achieve success. There's a quote somewhere that says, when they look at all successful people, the common trait that they have is not intelligence, it's not IQs, it's grit. And grit is sustained dedication and perseverance towards a single goal. So it is being willing to show up, and it's having that support structure that has having that support structure allows you to keep showing up. It puts your guardrails in that when things are going tough, when you maybe don't have the energy, when you doubt yourself, they are the people and resources that will help you keep on track, that you can get your energy for, that you can get your commitment for. And having that will make it so much easier for you to stay on that track, for you to keep trying when you have that network to fall back on and to motivate you, to inspire you, to you know, cook you dinner when have so much homework that you can't, go out and get it yourself. Like those little things, right, will help kind of smooth the path in trying if you build yourself a good support system. And then third one is to actively do your best. People always say like try hard, do your best, but it's not enough to just go home and get the straight A's and then you're done. To actively do your best, you have to act with intention towards the goal. So you have to take your initiatives. You have to figure out what's right for you and try to do it. If you're just checking the boxes of a list that someone else made you, you'll only get so far. But if you go out and say like, well, I'm interested in this. What if I just read about this some more? You don't exactly know where that's going to lead you, but you're actively trying to do your best. You're trying to learn about your field, and then that may lead you to a question that takes you in another direction. You can ask that question. That may lead you to this opportunity. It kind of spider webs from there, but you have to actually put that energy in multiple forms to get that opportunities out. So that's the third advice. So first, know yourself and your passions. Two, build your support system, and three, actively do your best.
All right, so we're towards the end. So where do you think our viewers slash followers can follow up on your journey slash get to know more about you? Are there any upcoming projects or organizations or anything you'd like to share to our viewership, basically?
Yeah, so to get to know me personally, I do have a website. You can go to my website, drswatimohan.com. I put a bunch of links on there to various like interviews and stuff that I've done if you want to learn more about what I do at JPL or about different areas of my interest. I do want to give a shout out to one of the nonprofits that I volunteer with that I helped found called STEAM Superheroes, which is an organization aimed at connecting STEM professionals to students, K through college to help inspire and educate them. So we focus on uh, providing hands-on activities or opportunities that actually connect the STEM professional to the students where they talk about their career and actually do a hands-on activity related to that. So kids can actually connect, oh, if I learn physics, these are all the different types of careers that could go from that. So it's not just, oh, I took CS, I have to be a software programmer. It's this is, software engineering, and these are all the different things that you could do with it. Because sometimes we get kind of we know the classes that we take in college or engineering, but the world is so big and the opportunities are so big, and there's plenty of room for you to create your own specific niche. So if we can help um, expose kids to a wide variety of careers and kind of tie it to what they're learning now with the skills and particular disciplines, hopefully that'll open their eyes. So when they go to college, they can try out different things that might interest them.
Thank you so much for your time. You have been an amazing guest. To our viewers, thank you for watching Voices Among the Stars, episode 2. And remember to
Keep
keep shooting
shooting
for
for
the
the
Live on the stars.
stars.
Hi, thank you very much.